Nu kör vi. All right, we are downstairs at Stecco dinner, Lenny, with my good friend Lenny Parracino from LA Clippers, NBA, Los Angeles. What a week, man.
Great week, great week.
This is day 5. One more day tomorrow.
Yes.
So we're here in Colorado.
That says a lot in the dissection class.
Why?
When you're dissecting each day,
Yeah.
the last day says a lot.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true. It's not a lot to dissect left. No. So anyway, we're in Colorado Springs. We're here for a 6-day dissection class with the Stecco family. And you just posted a great post on your Instagram. By the way, follow him, Soft Tissue Therapy. We'll post it like a link here. He has some great stuff. I was a little bit moved actually when I read your post. It was straightforward, but with a lot of humility and I mean, can you just talk a little bit about what you wrote? Because I really appreciate that.
Thank you. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, 30 plus years now, and I consider myself not a smart person, but very curious and eclectic. Some of the people that have impressed me the most educationally cross domains.
Right.
So they don't stick to just one thing. I think in science, we're very good at the system that we study, but we're not very good at integrating all the different systems that make up a whole human.
Right.
So we can be great at psychology, we can be great at pain science, we can be great at biomechanics, but are we really that good at integrating all of it together? I don't think so. I think because it's so vast. So people that have crossed domains have really impressed me, and they always had a lot of humility, right? And adaptability to open their mind to like, hey, there's a lot out there.
Right.
And so to be a part of Dr. Antonio Stecco and Dr. Carla Stecco, and knowing that the work came from their dad, and seeing their evolution and being a part of that from an educational perspective is very humbling to me.
Right.
So my post was just, hey, we got to pay it forward. There's a lot of people out there in the industry, they'll come to a course like this and learn, and then go home and like it's their own.
Right.
You know, and I'm very well read, so I see that a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, and I know that where that came from.
Right.
You're like, come on, man, you didn't make that up. And even when I teach, because I have a curriculum I teach, and the only thing that's unique about what I teach is the system that I put together to be practical. Because at the end of the day, I'm not a scientist. I read science, and then I have to interpret that science and make it practical, because at the end of the day, I'm a practitioner.
Right.
I got to help people perform at a higher level, regardless if it's grandma or a professional athlete. And I have a unique practice where I am working with some of the greatest athletes in the world, but I'm also working with mom and dad that just, hey man, they want to dance, make love, and play pickleball. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, that's really what the post is about. Like, these people are unique because they have the science, but they also have the practical application.
Right.
And that's rare, because a lot of times I go to scientific lectures and it's like very didactic, very scientific, and then you got to really extrapolate it out and make it practical. But they're doing both.
Yeah.
You know, like our lectures, and then we go down in the lab, and even though it's a fresh tissue dissection, let's be real, it's still dead.
Oh yeah.
And I always say to people, I said, hey, if I was hanging out outside your house every day studying telephone poles, writing notes, you come up to me and go, hey man, hey, what are you doing? And if I said to you, I'm trying to understand living trees, you'd probably say, hey bro, get in the forest.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I mean? So you still have to take it in perspective.
Right.
Like, it's still a cadaver class, right? But their ability to bridge the gap between science in the laboratory and practicality is pretty phenomenal.
Right. I just did this kind of talk with Carla Stecco, and she said she has released over 200 papers and studies.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be, I mean, a lot have changed over the last 15 years.
A lot.
And today it's really hard to even argue with this, that it's not real.
Yeah.
Especially maybe thanks to the Stecco family the most, Robert Schleib, a few more. And as you said, yeah, they're dead people, but still we can see the connections, from the organs to the muscles to everything. It's connected to everything. And it makes me really humble. And I think what struck me with your post is let's give this pay it forward. Because you know what, to be honest,
Spread the word.
Spread the word. To be honest, I wrote a post, or I did a video to I have a Facebook group, the Movement Alliance, and the last thing I said is I promise to do everything I can to pay this forward to you, so you can pay it forward to your clients and stuff.
Yeah, that's great.
Which was great. So then I read yours. I'm like, wow, this is basic. But what's your biggest? You said also in your post that maybe this is the best week of learning in your 30-year career. What is the biggest take home?
Well, we had Carmelo,
Yeah.
Antonio, and Carla. And like I said in my post, anybody can Google their name. Go to Google Scholar.
Yeah.
There's a tremendous amount of research that they do. All of them are willing to share.
How many PhDs?
Remember,
do they have?
between three of them, Carmelo has like 6. I don't know how he finds the time to have 6 PhDs or doctoral degrees.
Yeah.
Antonio has 2. Carlo's an MD, orthopedic surgeon, and professor of anatomy. So,
That's a lot.
for people that love evidence-based, I always say, like, evidence-based, if you're sitting around waiting for evidence, it's more of a follower as opposed to being evidence-led.
Yeah.
So they're really on the forefront of evidence. In fact, I work in the NBA, and there's a strong possibility we bring them back over to really help our organization take it to a whole nother level.
Right.
Because some of the preventative things that they're doing in their research, I hope that happens.
Yeah.
But besides, it's there. The information is there.
Yeah.
In academics, it takes time for people to accept it because sometimes it challenges what's already out there in the text. It challenges what you know, and sometimes that becomes, a tough thing for the ego.
Right.
But the reality is the reality, and I'm a reality seeker.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to change. When I teach, I try to keep it very open-ended, and I promise people if they come to our courses every year, I promise you it'll be different every year.
Yeah.
The principles will stay the same.
Yeah.
Like gravity's not going to change,
Right.
three-dimensionality is not going to change, but I will promise you our interpretation of how to apply that's going to change because we just get better. That's what evolution is. I always make a stupid little analogy. I'm like, if I had a phone from 1985, because I'm old, y'all be looking at me like, what are you doing, bro? Like, what about an iPhone?
Right.
Like, everybody makes fun of me, but we can still go to the gym and do the same damn exercises we were doing 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And everybody's cool with it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying throw that stuff away.
No.
But, we got to evolve.
Things change.
We have to evolve.
Things change. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But if you look at the whole connected tissue curriculum, if you would have put it that way, or I know you're really big into like the manual therapy about it. Why would you say you would choose like the manual therapy that we do before anything else?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, first of all, the way I teach manual therapy is it's a load input. I don't look at it from a structural input. It's very common for people to say, I'm going to go and release the psoas. You just did a dissection. It took us 4 days to get to the psoas.
Yeah.
You can't touch a psoas. Not only can you not touch it, you're going through some very complex neurovascular structures, very complex viscera, but it's no one's fault. It's because we learned on dead people.
Right.
We learned based on an artist who was in the laboratory, then creating art. Like today, we were able to dissect a foot, open up the subtalar joint, and many people were impressed with the fact that it really looked like a ball and socket joint.
Yeah.
In all my plastic models, the talus did not look that rounded.
Yeah.
And you get this appreciation when you go body to body, like, wow. It's interesting how the artist did that.
Yeah.
So back to your question. the way I look at manual therapy is it's simply a load input that has to be applied based on the client, patient, athlete's reflexive reaction,
Right.
not my imposing on them. So a simple way of saying this is you're working with the person, not on the person.
Right.
And there's a big difference. If you come into the body with this preconceived mindset or bias, like I'm going to that tissue because you have this wrong, you're imposing your biases as opposed to exposing the reality.
Right.
Yeah. And that's not esoteric at all. It's real.
It's real.
Yeah, that's the whole key. We teach this all the time. For those that practitioners listening to your podcast, challenge yourself each day. How much of what I do is imposing on someone versus getting them to expose
Right.
why they're with me and what they want, and me following what they're saying, but putting it into a package based on what they need.
Yeah.
There's a big difference.
Big difference.
Yeah.
Love that.
And that's just an old guy because I've done it wrong for so many years.
I mean, you're not old to start with.
Yeah, yeah. Remember the cadaver? You said, "Hey, you're real close to that." You remember
Did
that?
I say that?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah,
you
you
were
did.
saying
No, no.
it. We're having fun today. We need to laugh at the fact. I mean, the laugh
Yeah,
is
at
so
the end of the
great.
day, man.
Yeah, we need to laugh too.
I can only stay serious for so long. You know?
Right. Yeah, it's yeah. But again, back to my question, because I see too. If you come into me and you say you have like, oh, I got my QL or my hip, whatever is a little tight. Can you work on me?
Mm-hmm.
That we're gonna start maybe there because they want me to start there. But if you have like, let's say knee pain, but you have a tight hip, we can't just treat the knee pain.
Yeah.
We're gonna look at the calf, we're gonna look at the foot, we're gonna look at, and maybe even the shoulder on this side,
Right.
to see where the connection, where does like the densification starts.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have a tight somewhere, we're gonna compensate somewhere, and maybe we do too much work at some tissues, which can get overused easily.
Yeah.
So that's how I see it too. When we do our kind of treatment, we need to like figure out, we need to loosen up the tissue and get more slide and glide, so to speak, everywhere, not just where like the house is burning down.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it all depends on, the severity of the case,
Right.
why they're coming in. But you're right. At the end of the day, it's about tensional equilibrium.
Yeah.
And we have to be able to explain it to people that makes sense to them, because in the end, if you really interview people, what they care about is what they're sensing, how long is it going to take to get better, and when can I get back to my function?
Yeah.
That's really what they care about. They don't care about the names,
Yeah, when can I run again?
iliopsoas and QL.
No.
That sounds cool. But, and sometimes they come in with that verbiage, but at the end of the day, they want to go back and do the things they want to do. And our goal is the tensional equilibrium.
Yeah.
And we have to be, skeptical of just one area of the body. Like you perfectly said, you have to go around the body and, Now, we're also held into a situation where we only have so much time.
Yeah.
And so what you have to do as a great practitioner is you have to create a hierarchy.
Yeah.
What is the most important thing to address with the time that we have? And I know this firsthand, like in pro sports, we have endless time when we're not getting ready for a game.
Right.
We have endless time. Right. Wow, you can spend 5 hours on someone.
Exactly.
And, you know what I mean? In private practice, a lot of times they're like, oh, I got a 9, a 10, 11, a 12.
Yeah.
And we may be lucky because we have an hour with somebody.
Right.
But think about a lot of the physicians, at least in America,
minutes,
they might have 7.5 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
So, there's a lot of factors that go into this.
Yeah.
And I think with experience, obviously education, you can create a hierarchy and be very specific for that time to at least start the process. It's a process, right? Which is defined as a series of actions directed towards a result.
Right.
So it's not just, I always hate when we hear people say, oh, I can fix them. Like, it's not a building, it's not a car.
No.
No, no, no. It's an organism that's extremely complex. We have to be very humble with the complexity.
Yeah.
And what we have to do is we have to have a system to appreciate the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think too, if we can, like you said, the way I think when I have like less time to work with someone, as you say, yeah, try to, okay, where should I go now because I have this amount of time, and then try to give them exercises. Try to open up whatever I need to open up and get some more fluids there, so they can move a little bit better there, and then give them appropriate exercises so they can do at home until they can come back next time.
Yeah, and Dr. Carla had, I mean, I was just, of course, it's totally biased because it's the way I practice. And she said exactly, I was like, oh, my hero. And she said the same thing. I'm just so excited.
Yeah.
But she said the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
She's like, you know, if someone comes in, you have to get the buy-in.
Right.
Right? Because that's a huge part of the success of the process is they buy into it. They believe in it. They trust in it. And, you know, then at the end of the day, you have to teach people what to do on their own.
Yeah.
And I always use the dental analogy. Listen, you go to a dentist, at least this is the way it works in America. You go to the dentist, they do an amazing job with their evaluation. Then they send you to a hygienist. They do an amazing job with their evaluation. And then they tell you what to do at home.
Yeah.
They usually give you a little bag with a floss and a little pick and a toothbrush. And they're like, hey, make sure you, and you really need to work back here.
Right.
Because I don't want you back here, you know, needing deeper cleaning.
Right.
You know? And so that's the way we approach it.
Right.
It's like we can do the more intellectual stuff, but we got to teach you what to do.
Exactly.
It's very important.
So I know there's a lot of people watching this that are really like excited to start this journey now and wants to start learn the fascia treatment and learn to train like we do. Would you say it's because when we talk now, we're here, we're cutting up dead people. We have 30 years experience, blah blah blah. Yeah, we're this shit. We're not, but yeah, you know what I mean. How hard is it to learn like basic fascia techniques, the manual therapy that we do? You think? Does it take years? Or?
I mean, I think it depends on the teacher.
Yeah.
If you're gifted to be with a good teacher, they can fast track your learning. Unfortunately, academically, they're so behind where science is, and that's just the fact of academics.
Right.
There's even papers on this where if something changes in science, it may take up to 15 to 7, they say 17 years, but say 15 years for it to actually change at the academic level. So that's really hard for a student that's gone through, say, a doctoral of physical therapy and they get out of school, and then they come to a continuing education class and they're like, oh, I didn't learn that. It becomes very, very difficult. That's why I always say humility and adaptability are so important.
Yeah.
I personally think it depends on the teacher.
Right.
And I always strive when I teach classes to really try to help fast track the educational process.
Right.
So I think you have to have passion. I think you have to want to learn and not look at it as a task.
Right.
Like if you open up a book and you read more about connective tissue, movement, you know, basics in physics, you know, you have, and it's enjoyable. Yeah. I think that's what it needs. You know,
what I'm kind of looking for in the question is, if you, let's say you've gone through 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years of school to be a physiotherapist, whatever, and all of a sudden the science is just shifting big time, and you need to relearn pretty much what you just studied for 8 years.
Yeah.
And if they think that, oh, I need to study another 8 years now to figure this one out. No, right?
No.
It's
I think the biggest problem is we're not taught what science really is. A lot of people think science is this truth. But when you talk to scientists, they'll say science is more about a model. And models are all wrong, but some are more useful.
Right.
And that was a quote by George Box. And what he meant by that was a model is a way to test the science, and it's always an approximation because reality is so large and vast that we can't know it all. And so what we do is we test the model to see what works and what doesn't work. So what we're doing, that's evolution. So what we do is we go through it and we go, oh, that didn't work. It's okay. It doesn't mean your time is wasted. You just learn. In fact, that happened in our seminar when I asked a question and Antonio kind of laughed and said Carlo would cry, because they found that there wasn't as much mechanoreception in certain tissue, but what they found later, they're like, oh my God. Because the bottom line is in anatomy, for those of you who don't know, if neurology doesn't match with the anatomy that you're finding in the lab, it doesn't mean anything, because neurology is what moves the system.
Totally.
Right? The brain is meant to move you. You show me one brain disease in the world that doesn't affect movement.
Right.
Alcohol, I mean, that's not a brain disease, but alcohol, any kind of stimulant, anything that affects the brain affects movement.
Yeah.
And so the brain is really there for human movement. And you think about the brain, it's kind of interesting because it's encased in a helmet.
Yeah.
A very hard, especially yours, holy shit.
Yeah.
A hard helmet. So how does it perceive the world? All of the sensors. And out of the 5 senses everybody learned from school, there's only one you can't live without. The sense of pressure and tension. You can live without eyes. You can walk without eyes. Not as well, without hearing, without taste, without smell. But if you don't have pressure and tension that you sense, you can't move.
Right.
So this is a critical component.
Right.
And so integrating all that sensory information with the anatomy is absolutely critical. And this is fairly new.
Yeah.
And with this fairly new understanding, it really changes everything. So the models change. That's my whole point.
Love it.
So I always say to people like, oh, what do I study? What do I study? I go, the best thing to study right now, you can go on Amazon right now, is systems thinking.
Yeah.
Why? Because we're a system. And interesting, we're not a closed system like a clock. Now, a system has to have 3 things. It has to have elements, an interconnectedness, and a purpose. So a clock is a system meant to tell time. It's got elements. Like, there's always a thing, like, what part of a clock tells time? Like, maybe it was like, look at me weird. Like, it's the whole clock.
Yeah.
Not the hand, not the number, the whole clock. So it's the elements that are interconnected with a purpose of telling time, right? The interesting thing about the human organism, it's an open system. So if you and I are sitting here, one input comes in, okay, whatever that input is,
Mosquito.
your reaction could be totally different than mine. The mosquito loves you because you're a cologne. I don't wear cologne.
Oh.
You got that beautiful hair. I don't have that beautiful hair. It likes you, but it doesn't like me because we're an open system.
Yeah.
You see? And so I always say to people, study systems thinking in an open system, and then you'll understand it's not so frustrating when you learn one way of doing things because it changes. That's the key, but the principles stay the same.
Yeah.
There's always 3 things to a system. Yeah.
I love it so much. So if you go to, because I know a lot of people are interested in pro sports, and so how much of this are you incorporating in the LA Clippers? Is it just the manual therapy, or is it the training as well?
Yeah, a good question. Well, luckily, my private practice is very different than the LA Clippers. At the LA Clippers, I'm really a hired gun, and I do one thing.
Okay.
When I'm in private practice, I get to do many different things. Yeah, because I have such a great staff with the Clippers. These guys are amazing. And so I get to utilize their expertise, and they utilize mine, and we work as a synergistic team. So I'm more of the soft tissue therapist when I'm there.
Right.
But yeah, of course I apply it. Now, in private practice, when I don't have the luxury of having such a great team, and I'm on my own, then I apply more of a bigger, if you will, a holistic approach.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know some people will wonder this. What is the most common injury for NBL players in UC?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, everyone would think ankle sprains or patellar tendonitis, but because of my bias in soft tissue, and it's important, and we've actually proved this through many biometric studies, the biggest injury is a contusion, which you hockey players, right? You go with no teeth.
We do this.
Yeah, you guys like put a piece of
shake
tape.
it off.
Put a piece of tape on it. You know, because I actually work with my boss, who also works for the LA Kings, and our facility in my private practice is in with the LA Kings.
Right,
and
right.
hockey players are built different, man.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, they got
Tell
no
me about
teeth.
it.
Their jaws this way. Like, put a piece of tape on it. Great,
about
but
it, yeah.
but you know, and I always say the contracts are different. But the
True.
point is, like, a contusion to the body is, and especially as it adapts, can really change force transmission, which can really affect joint function. It's kind of back to what you said.
Yeah.
Something happens over here, but then it affects something down the line.
Right.
And so that is the thing that happens a lot. We've seen them so big, like a lot of people don't realize basketball is extremely aggressive and combative. You know, they're big men,
Yeah.
knees in the thighs, and we see these big hematomas, and that affects force transmission. It could be
Right.
patellofemoral, it can be,
Right.
you know, overactivity of the hip musculature, and then congestion in the hip, leading to decreased proprioception at the ankle. It can be a lot of things. Yeah.
All right. We're gonna join. I mean, did you hear the party upstairs?
Yeah, it's party.
And these guys are sober, and they're dancing like they're
Yeah.
been drinking for 10.
Are you gonna let your hair down or?
No.
No.
No. I mean, my brain is on fire. I need to go to sleep now because I'm Swedish. So that's what I do.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much for this
All
beautiful
right.
week.
You got it, brother.
And thank you for this. And
Right.
remember, pay it forward because that's what we do.